Hi and welcome back to Matthew Travels and Tips, and in today's video we are going to cover the Real ID Act, and we're going to talk about how to obtain a Real ID and what restrictions may occur if you do not have a Real ID. Okay, so before we talk about how to obtain a Real ID, we first need to know what is the Real ID Act. And the Real ID Act establishes minimum security standards for license issuance and identification, and prohibits federal agencies from accepting, for certain purposes, driver's license and identification cards from states not meeting the Act's minimum standards. The purposes covered by this Act are accessing federal facilities, entering nuclear power plants, and boarding federally regulated commercial aircrafts. Now, why was this rule put in place? It was actually put in place back in 2005. And the Real ID Act enacted the 9/11 Commission's recommendation that the federal government set standards for the issuance of sources of identification, such as a driver's license. So basically what this does now is it prohibits federal agencies like TSA, for instance, from accepting a driver's license or identification card from states that do not meet these standards and requirements for official purposes such as getting through the airport security checkpoint and boarding a commercial plane. Okay, so fortunately, since the Real ID Act was put in place, almost all states have taken measures to become compliant so that their new IDs and driver's license have become compliant. So as you can see here, all the states that are in green means that their new IDs are compliant and follows the requirements of the Real ID Act. So there are only 4 states currently that are still not fully compliant, and these are Oregon, and they have been granted extensions until August 7th of 2020. We have Oklahoma, who has been granted extensions until September 18th of 2020. And then we have New Jersey and America's Samoa, who are currently under review, meaning they've submitted their documents to become compliant by the Real ID Act. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how do you get a Real ID or a compliant ID. So the first step is you're going to be going to your DMV, like if you're applying for a license or an identification, same as before. The only difference is now they will be taking a few more steps when it comes to issuing this document to you. And when they're issuing the document, they're going to need a certain amount of things. You're going to have to take with you proof of identity, which can be a passport, birth certificate, or even social security card. You need to take your social security number with you, proof of that social security number, so that can be your social security card, W-2 or 1099 or a pay stub. You need to show proof of residency, which is something that shows your mailing address, like a utility bill. And if you have a name change, you need to take your proof of name change, which can be a court order, marriage license, or divorce decree. And when you take those things in, they're going to accept all the documents, they're going to fingerprint you, take a new photo for that ID, and issue the new compliant identification. Okay, so this is how you obtain a Real ID, but if you don't have a Real ID as yet, there's no need to worry, as you still have some time to obtain one. The rules and regulations for this act begins on October 1st of 2020. So basically that means beginning October 1st of 2020, every air traveler 18 years of age and older will need a Real ID compliant driver's license, state issued enhanced driver's license, or another acceptable form of ID to fly within the United States. Okay, so a question I get sometimes is there any way I can travel domestically if I don't have a compliant ID? And we're going to go back into the last part where they said you can use another acceptable form of ID to fly within the United States, and this goes hand in hand. The other acceptable form of ID that you can use is a passport book or a passport card. So if you don't have a compliant ID but you have a passport book or card that is valid, you can use that to travel. And even if you aren't traveling soon or you already have a compliant ID, I always recommend everyone to apply for a passport book, a passport card, or even both. As anyone over the age of 18, these documents are good for 10 years. It shows proof of identity, proof of citizenship. It's a very good document to possess. Okay, and this is everything we have for you on the Real ID Act. Now, if you have any questions regarding the Real ID Act, feel free to comment below. We'll do our best to answer these questions as soon as possible. But thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe and like this video.